Okay everybody, and welcome back to the painting channel. Today it's another in the series of quick and easy, and today I want to explore Puffy White Clouds. So let's roll the intro, let's get on and let's see what happens. Okay everybody, before we dive straight into this one, I just wanted to say again a big thank you to all my recent subscribers that have come on board to the channel and helped supporting, and all my existing ones. Thank you very much guys, it really is appreciated. And don't forget that if you do like this and you're not a subscriber, then do hit the subscribe button, click the bell icon, and also give it the thumbs up if you've enjoyed the content. And at the same time, don't forget there is a live stream every Monday and every Friday at 7 p.m. on my channel. Tune in there, one's an oil, one's a watercolor, and get involved and say hi in the chat if you wish to. And if you do want a little bit more, then don't forget there is the Patreon. You can dive over, take a look at it. All the details are in the description below this video. Have a look. If you want to get involved, you'd be very welcome. It doesn't cost much more than a coffee or 2 cups of coffee a month, but for it you get so much more content. I'd love to have you on board. So with that all said, let's look at Puffy White Clouds. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken a block of pad, which is a Hahnemühle pad. It's 230 pounds in weight, which is approximately 500 GSM, and it's a rough surface. It's really a lovely pad, and I've gridded it out to give you 6 small cameos of the idea of Puffy White Clouds. So let's go on and let's start with the first one. All I'm using predominantly is cobalt blue, but an awful lot of phthalocyanin blue. It's a lovely blue and makes a great deep sky color at the top. So I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to put in the start basically, and we're just going to come down and suggest our first cloud. That's all I'm doing for that. And now I'm going to come in with some neutral tint in another pan. I'm going to wet up the area, but there we are, we've got the base of the cloud. Okay, what I'm going to do now is use a damp brush and just tease the edges around this. Now it will get dry very quickly because I'm in my studio and it's not very cool. It's really warm, so forgive me for that, but I'm just feathering out some of these lovely colors, not to lose all the white, but to give me a really delicious cloud form. A little bit more neutral tint coming in, and so far I've used 3 colors. I've used 2 blues in the sky, and I've used a wonderful neutral tint in the base of the cloud here, and we've got a bit of weight in that. Now if I want, I can mix a bit of the blue and a bit of the neutral tint together just to give a slightly cooler variant to the base of the cloud, like that. And all the way it is just bleeding and softening. Now here it's still quite hard, so I'm going to tease the area together, and also that little bit of blue, let that come down, and we don't want to lose all our white, so I'm being a little bit careful, very careful as I come down. But there's a lovely fusion of color. Let's lose that bit, and we'll let that set out. I'm going to let this dry up, and I'm going to start the second one. Very similar. I'm just coming in with a different action, and this one will be virtually the same sort of idea but a different cloud. So I'm just going to come down with a great big cloud at the top and let that sky come all the way down. But I'm going to try and do things a lot wetter this time and allow that to come through and mingle a lot more than this one will have done. Let's take that up like so. Let's just soften this off, soften around the edges, just a damp brush around the edges, and let that will sort of find its own way. The paint will start to move and it will find its own way around. A beautiful big, I witnessed this the other day on the beach, and something very close to this, and it was as much as I could, almost stretching back as it's towering way above me in the sky, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And I photographed it so many different ways, and I felt that that's what prompted this little video, is to just because I went out there and I saw something not unlike this, and it was just great to record and great to see. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to keep this coming down and a bit more weight in there as we did with the one before. But while this is still wet, I'm going to put some, let's put some sea on this one. So a little bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of ultramarine blue. Just going to come across here with a bit of sea. Big scratchy mark. Just push that through and allow that to be something like that. I think that works quite nicely. Sorry about the rustling paper. I've got tissue paper ready at hand, and I just want to put a variant in the sea color like so. Let that come all the way down, and the two areas will start to blend and merge. And now I just put a quick dash of color through to be my sand in the foreground, maybe a little bit of Indian red into that, and very, very quickly done. All we've got is a nice horizon line with a lovely cloud on the top of it. I am just going to tease this little area in here before it totally dries up. And this is another good reason why you should be thinking of heavier weight papers. Heavier weight papers give yourself a little bit more working time. They stay damper longer, and therefore they can allow you a bit more working time. But there we are, a nice little cloud, a nice little base to it, and a bit of sand. Very, very suggestive. Now let's come in with a third go. We're still coming back to this one. And I'm just going to pre-wet this paper this time, just to give you another way in. And I'm only going to take it down so far to about there against our horizon line again. For this I'm going to put in just a little bit of the blue, but much more water coming into it this time. It will dry up that much lighter. And I'm just going to tease around with some of the shapes of what will be clouds. Just tapping in some color. You can already see little bits of cloud in your head. Your brain will start making sense of those, and they look like clouds. If you want to tap in a little bit more blue at the top, just drop a little bit across the top there. Because I've got this on a slight angle, it will allow me the time to, this will start to drain slowly this way. That just adds a bit of depth to the sky at that point. But we got our clouds. If we want to change the shape, now's the time to do it. We got a lot of water down here on the bead of the the bead of the wash. But if we want to take some out, we use a damp brush, and we can literally start lifting some of this pigment out, take it off, put it into a damp cloth like I'm holding here, and just allow that to blend and do what it wants. It's not as strong as these, but it is a nice cloud. And I will go in with some more neutral tint now, just to come up and support the base of this cloud as it comes through. Like so, a little bit more neutral tint in there, like that. Gives a lovely base color. You can add some blue into that if you wish to. It's entirely up to the individual how you want your color of the base to be, whether you want it violet, blues, warms, or whatever. It doesn't really make a lot of odds. You just need to remember that it is going to be darker in shadow at the base and the degree of thickness in the cloud. So now we have a lovely cloud already. You can see it. It doesn't have to be totally defined like these. It can be just very, very subtly shown, as this one is. Just going to take that little edge off. There's a little scratch on the paper, I see. Not a big deal. Now, while that's still wet, I can do very much the same thing again. Let's put in a little bit of indigo, and let's have a tap of, let's use a little bit of cerulean in there. Very, very weak. Let's run that through like so. Big scratchy mark, and we've got some glisten on the water, and we can let that dry up, or we can come in, and I'm just putting very, very simple bases in, just suggestive of shoreline or land. We'll do land in the bottom ones. These can be the shoreline at the top. It matters not. It's just to give you an indication of landform, as it were, and something that this all makes sense with. Let's just come back to the first one again, and I want to wet up underneath this now. I don't want to make it too wet because it will push back into the cloud. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to wet that under there, and I'm going to tap in a very faint pinkish bluish value underneath the cloud that will come down to the top of the sea. Now I'm going to come back in with some more neutral tint very quickly, I hope, before everything dries up. And let's just put in another value in here and allow some of that to bleed into that sky and create possibly a little bit of rain substance. Now this is going to cause me a mark, so I'm just going to tease that out. Wash the brush, not too much, I don't want any pigment on it, but it could cause me a problem. So I'm dry brushing over the area very quickly, teasing that out, and hopefully with a couple of taps of a tissue, which should be dry, that will stop any bleed happening in this paper to the other colors already in place. And hopefully we've got that, and now we've got a sense of rain coming under there, which I'm going to add to now. While it's still damp, I'm just going to put in a sense that there is rainfall underneath this cloud coming down and into the water. And let's just add some watery colors with the blue and the neutral tint. We're still pretty much working on the 1 or 2 colors. We're not actually doing too much in terms of adding to that. A little bit of orange, just very suggestive of a bit of landfall and sand, but we have a sense of the rain coming down. So we have 3 clouds very different to each other. That's gone back up in there, maybe a bit of a mistake, but not a problem. I think it looks attractive. Let's talk about some more clouds now. Let's go back in, let's clean that palette out, and let's put some more blues in. And I'm just going to go, this time I'm just going to use some cobalt blue for my top of my sky. Very different blue, as you can see, gives a different effect. You can take the temperature of the day and change it by the types of blue that you use in the sky. So here I'm going to do very much as I did up here, just change the shapes of what we see. Got a lovely summer sky, like so. Let that tease off in a minute. Going to let it dry a little bit, but not totally. I don't want hard lines. I'm going to just drop a little bit more blue into the top, because the blue in a sky gets very intense the more above your head you look. The more down towards the horizon you get, the less that becomes. Let's take that out. Let's come back in with a little bit of neutral tint on this one, but for this I'm also going to add in a little bit of ultramarine violet, just to take it totally off the brownish warmish value of the neutral tint. And I'm going to come in with a really low base into this, and we're going to take it all the way down through to there. And I want to add in a nice little touch of vermilion right in the bottom there, as that comes down to what could be considered farmland or whatever at the top. Now let's quickly go back in and play around with the softening of the edges of this cloud. If you've got too much blue happening, just lift off like so. You can even carefully tap back in and lift it off with a cloth, and we get a fusion of area that you can't, the brain can see the difference, but it makes up what it can't tell. So you've got this beautiful fusion between the puffy white clouds. And often when you see a cloud, yes, it can be hard edged, but often you see little areas of bleed off into the sky, as it were. And also it can, there is a little trick involved with allowing the soft white edges to bleed off into, and it almost creates an intense degree of light around that cloud. I don't quite know how to explain it, but if you look often, you'll see this sort of thing. Now I let this go off a little bit too long, so I'm just going to come in there, wet this up a little bit, let it come in and join in 1 or 2 places like so, and we get a lovely cloud form We can make that run into there, and I want to drop in a little bit more depth, so I'm going to come in with some more violet from that point and a little bit of neutral tint. That's probably a little bit too much. Let's come back with some more violet in there. I think that will work. Bit more water, and let's just run that in through here like so. We can let that build up or not, as the case may be. Depends how you want it to see, how you want it to be. Tapped a little bit more blue into that. That's quite nice. Very, very quick cloud studies. And if you wanted to do a lot of little learning curves, then this is a great way of doing it. If you've got lots of little scraps of paper, I sat in my gallery with my students yesterday, and this is what gave me partly the idea to do this. That as I was teaching them, as I was talking to them, they were watching me as I just held up little bits of paper in my hand, not sort of this sort of size, and I just literally did little skies, and I will show you at the end of the video exactly what I was doing. And you know, if you've got scraps of paper, it's exactly what you can do. You can just take a little piece, get it set up. You don't have to have large easels or anything of this nature. Just hold it in your hand if you have to, and to that end you can get some wonderful little studies going, and it will help you no end in the future. All this builds confidence, and that's truly what you need to be doing, is building the confidence to play with the colors, play with the paints, and allow them to sort of suggest things to you as you move forward. Now I'm going to put in let's put some yellow and green into that. Let's put a distant set of hills in here, maybe just a little bit of ground, not necessarily hills, but just a little bit of ground. Even this flush down through here looks like it's dropping rain, which is quite exciting. I quite like that. A little bit of warmth into the bottom because we're predominantly blue and cool, so a little bit of orange in the bottom of our ground, and there we are. We have a piece of ground, piece of farmland, piece of something, but we've got this wonderful cloud above it. So let's come in with some cerulean blue only this time, and let's put that in. Now I'm going to try and create something that's a little bit different, like so. We can play around with these, but I've left them very deliberately, as we can then come back in and create forms within the little marks that I've left. And let's make a much paler value coming down like so, almost to nothing. We can change some of that value to a pinkish red with some vermilion, so let's just come back in there and tap some of this lovely color in. I didn't want to go across to the other paper, but there we are, and we're just suggesting a different color temperature in our sky. Could be late in the day, could be almost anything. We're going to let that one dry off, but before we do that, we're going to come in and play around with some of these edges here. Build some, lose some. Just soften what we see. We can leave them hard, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not suggesting that you've got to do this every time. I'm trying to show you throughout the whole of this series that you can play around with the effects and create different forms by leaving some hard edges and then softening other edges. They will create the illusion of nice cloud forms. And there we are. Just play around with that one. We can actually tease those two together a little bit more, and we leave some of them hard, some of them soft. Just play around and fuse some and leave some. I'm going to come in with some neutral tint. It's a good base color generally. Don't have to use it, but it does come out and work as a very good base color to a cloud. Just soften the effect of that off like so, and across into that one, and maybe just a snatch or two into this like that, and maybe a little bit there and in there. Now let's just come in and play around with that, soften the effect. It's going to bleed with all the blue paint. It's not a big problem, just as long as you've got a little bit of control over it, but you do get the idea, I hope. Just playing around with some of these marks. Lose some of that, that's a little bit too much. Just take some of that away, and maybe a little bit out of there too. But we've got to sort of not puffy white clouds, but a cloud form nonetheless. Taking that's a bit heavy on top, so I'm just going to lose some of that. Take some out there. Each time I'm washing the pigment out of my brush, but I'm also drying off the excess water into this. Just run it through my fingers and play it out like that. Just soften that mark. Soften one or two of these way down here. We want them nice light, but we don't want them so obvious. There we go. We're going to leave that one to the end and we'll just come back in and finish that. Now for our final one. And to that I will put in, let's make another puffy white cloud, but this time we are going to make it very similar to this, but we're going to use two blues. We're going to use the Phthalocyanin blue and the cobalt blue together. And I'm going to come in with a really intense dark blue, which is representative of how deep that blue can look above your head. And let's bring that down with some lovely sense of white cloud by scratching almost a dry brush across and let that come down. Now that I'll take the excess off, take that out of it, don't want that. Gotta be careful I don't flick paint everywhere else as well. That's the problem with working in small. But you see how intense that blue is. It will dry lighter, but it really does or can look that intense. Okay, now I'm going to put in some neutral tint one more time. A little bit more subtle with it this time. So I'm just going to come in and I want to build a lovely form of shadows within the big cloud itself. So I'm just taking it up to within a gnat whisker of the blues. I don't want to let that blue come cascading into my other forms. So there's a very, very subtle shift in pigment, and it is just a very, very soft there. Hopefully that will be enough, and we can put in a bit more weight, perhaps a bit of blue, a bit more neutral tint, a bit more blue into that, and take off the excess and just come into the base of this cloud. Don't want too much color, just want to suggest that below the puffy shapes and forms. You know how these sort of get really dense down the bottom, and you're not sure if they're just going to be rain clouds developing or just transitory and moving through your scene on their journey to dropping rain somewhere else. But yeah, I think this is just a nice way of doing it. We're building up a lovely sense, softening off, dragging the paintbrush across like so, but it is all very, very quick. I don't know how long this video has been running, but you've seen that I've created 6 little paintings in a matter of minutes in sort of real terms. Hopefully you've gained something from these that you can then take on into your own paintings. So I think that looks nice there. I'm going to drop underneath with a little bit, just a little tap of vermilion. It may pick some up, and if it does, I'll turn it into a rain cloud. And just want to tap in the bottom of the sky, just underneath. I could have waited for this to totally dry up under this bottom of this cloud, but I feel that this is quite a nice way to do it. And if there is a slight bit of, in fact I'm almost encouraging it to drop in and fuse down and bleed into the sky at the bottom. It can always be a mistake. It's a decision you make, but it's not a big problem. If it goes wrong, it just goes a little bit wrong, because you can always add more and make it a definite rain cloud. So now I will just finish with maybe a suggestion of a nice sort of hill. It's going to bleed back in that way. I can lessen the effect by taking that off there and reducing the amount of water to stop it bleeding back, and then just drop in some orangey reds into the green, a little bit of green, a little bit of phthalo green, a bit more. There you go. And we can just run in a nice bit of field into the foreground. Job done. Okay, there we are. Okay, we finished everything else off. Let's just pop back in very quickly with a little bit of violet and a little bit of green, and just put in, I did say, or I keep saying little hills, so let's just put in something that does resemble a little bit of hill. That's a little bit too violet, gotta say. So let's temper that down with a little bit of green into that. There we go, and we can just put in something that does resemble a bit of a distance hill and a different form. And let's come back in very, very quickly with something like this. And of course, if it's your own landscape, you can add trees and you can do anything you like. This is merely to give reference to the sky and just give it some exciting little shape and form, and adding it so that it sort of sits on terra firma. There you go. So there we are, 6 paintings, 6 skies. They're not all billowing puffy white ones, but hopefully you've got something from it. Hopefully that you can see that just by the various applications of color, water and the paint, you can actually create different forms, from hard edges to very soft ones, very ephemeral, and you can just have a whole lot of fun. But what I do say is that, like I said to you earlier, I would show you that during the course of yesterday, I sat with 6 little, or 7 actually, little scraps of paper that I just completely played around with my students. And hopefully you can see that you can have a whole lot of fun and come up with various, and I had no reference for these were merely little paintings that I created from the fact that I'd seen a sky that morning on my dog walk over the beach near to where I live, and I actually just held that in my head and just created a few paintings based on that. Okay, so you can really do the same sort of thing that I did. You can go out with your smartphone or tablet, take a few shots of skies over a course of, and then all those lovely scraps of paper that you would have thrown away, use them, studies, little studies, even a big sheet of paper, and cut it up in the same way I have, will all have relevance. And the more you do, the better accustomed you come to seeing and understanding. But above all, you really start to understand how you can apply color and paint with different degrees of water and come out with different effects. And that's really what I'm trying to show you. Not just puffy white clouds, but understanding the movement of water, the dampness, and how you apply it and the end result. So with that all said, thanks very much for watching. I look forward to catching you in another video in the future. So in the meantime, as I said before, subscribe, like, comment, fantastic. Share it with your friends, fantastic as well. And I catch each and every one of you in the next video. Stay safe, happy painting, try this out. And if it's not this one, then take all those scraps and go outside and have some fun. All the best to you, take care, bye bye.